Every human being holds within them the seeds of greatness, but greatness never blossoms in fits and starts. It flourishes in steady, focused action, performed day after day, regardless of mood, circumstance, or recognition. The secret to staying consistent, no matter what, is not a mystical force, nor a gift of birthright. It is a deliberate construction of mental and emotional architecture that any person can build. The foundation begins with clarity. Not vague dreams or half-hearted goals, but a definite major purpose that is so deeply understood it becomes a personal mission. When a person wakes up knowing exactly what they are fighting for, be it freedom, legacy, mastery, or redemption, then discipline becomes natural. A man or woman with a purpose will walk through fire. The scattered, unclear mind avoids even a cold breeze. So define your reason, burn it into your thoughts. When the why is deep, the how becomes obvious. But even a strong purpose can be drowned if you fail to master your emotions. Human beings are emotional creatures. Some days you'll feel tired. Some days fear will grip you. Other times you'll want to quit because progress feels invisible. This is where most people break, but here's the truth. Emotions are not enemies. They are energy. When you feel pain, turn it into urgency. When you're scared, channel it into precision. When you feel doubt, remember that even legends once doubted themselves. Don't fight your emotions, train them to serve you. Now let's speak plainly. Motivation is unreliable. There will be days when you feel absolutely nothing. These are the most important days of your life. This is where consistency must be powered by habit, not hope. The ones who win are not the ones who are constantly inspired. They are the ones who created a system so simple, so repeatable, that they can execute it when they're tired, heartbroken, sick, or even betrayed. Habits are your greatest insurance policy. If you brush your teeth without thinking, you can build the same auto-response for your mission. Wake up, move, write, build, lead, do it by default, and then comes the inevitable failure. Adversity, rejection, mockery, setbacks, this is the final test. Most people will use difficulty as the excuse to stop. They'll say, it wasn't meant to be. But the consistent person sees adversity as the sharpening stone of champions. Setbacks aren't signals to quit. They are signals to refocus, refine, and return stronger. When you keep going, despite the opposition, you are declaring to the world and to yourself, I am unshakable, I am inevitable. Consistency is not about being perfect. It's about refusing to disappear. It's about showing up so many times that the world has no choice but to take you seriously, and in time, slowly, silently, you will notice the results compound. Others will call it luck. They will call it talent, but you will know the truth. It was consistency, day after day, no matter what. A person cannot stay consistent in the absence of a clear target. This is the brutal truth most people overlook. They try to discipline themselves around vague ideas like success, freedom, or improvement, but these words mean nothing until they're defined in blood. Without a specific mission, your energy becomes scattered. You start things but don't finish. You feel busy but accomplish nothing. The human mind needs direction the way a ship needs a compass. Without it, we drift, pulled by distractions, paralyzed by doubt, and swallowed by the waves of comfort. Consistency begins with obsession, not effort. When you find something you must achieve, something you're willing to fail at again and again to master, that's when your behavior shifts. A person with a clear purpose doesn't need to be told to wake up early, to practice, to push through difficulty. Their purpose whispers in their ear constantly. It invades their mind during silence. It challenges them when they feel tired. You can only develop that inner voice through clarity. When you know your destination, every obstacle becomes a stepping stone, not a reason to quit. Most people confuse temporary excitement for long-term commitment. That's why they stay consistent for a week, maybe a month, and then vanish. Their goals were emotional impulses, not rooted identities. They said they wanted to get fit, but they didn't define what fit looked like or why it mattered. They said they wanted to build a business, but had no vision beyond money. And because their why was shallow, their effort collapsed the moment life applied pressure. That's why those who achieve lasting results begin with a process of painful introspection. They dig deep. They ask, what do I want so badly that I'm willing to suffer for it? Until that question is answered with absolute honesty, consistency will never hold. This clarity doesn't come from daydreaming. It comes from writing, from speaking your goals aloud, from asking yourself what kind of legacy you want to leave, from eliminating goals that were planted in you by society, your parents, your ego. You must unearth the real mission, the one that wakes you up at 3 a.m. with urgency, the one that makes you uncomfortable because it feels bigger than you. That's the purpose that leads to discipline. That's the clarity that fuels daily effort even when no one is watching. And once you've defined your purpose, you don't just carry it in your mind. You build your life around it. You adjust your routine. You say no to things that waste time. You design your environment to reduce distraction. The man who knows what he wants does not argue with mediocrity. He simply walks away from it. His discipline is not forced. It's automatic because his goal is non-negotiable. It's embedded in how he speaks, how he moves, and how he reacts to adversity. Even in moments of exhaustion, his purpose pulls him forward. You must also understand, clarity is not a one-time event. It's a daily ritual. Every morning, you must remind yourself why you're doing this. Every setback must be filtered through your greater mission. You refine your goals as you grow. You become more precise. What once felt impossible begins to feel urgent. The more you obsess over your mission, the more discipline becomes your default setting. This is why those with a defined purpose are consistent even when motivation dies, because they are no longer relying on moods. They're guided by mission. Once your purpose is clear, the next battle begins, not with the world, but within. The reason most people fail to remain consistent isn't because they lack a plan. It's because they are at war with their own emotions. They believe discipline means feeling nothing. They try to crush fear, silence doubt, and suppress frustration. But emotions, when resisted, grow louder. They begin to dictate your behavior from the shadows. That's why the true secret is not to destroy your emotions, but to harness them, direct them, and use them as fuel. You will wake up some days feeling exhausted. You will feel like what you're doing isn't working. There will be moments when you feel behind, unseen, even mocked by those around you. These are not signs to stop. They are signs to dig deeper. The man with clarity who ignores his emotional state will eventually burn out. But the man who learns to read his emotions like data and reframe them into power becomes untouchable. Fear, for example, can paralyze or sharpen you. Most people let fear convince them that risk equals danger. But fear is also an indicator of growth. The moment something scares you, it usually means it matters. It means you're expanding beyond the safety of who you used to be. Instead of running from fear, train yourself to lean into it with structure. Break your fears into parts. Approach them like problems, not monsters. Turn fear into precision. When you're scared, double-check your systems. When you feel exposed, prepare harder. Use fear to create momentum, not avoidance. Then there's doubt. Doubt always comes right before a breakthrough. The mind questions your path the moment results don't arrive on schedule. But this is a lie that will sabotage you if you're not prepared. Doubt can be turned into self-evaluation. Let it force you to refine your process, not abandon it. Let it make you better, not bitter. Everyone doubts. The difference is, the consistent ones question their methods, not their worth. They adjust their aim, but never question whether they're meant to shoot. And of course, frustration, that creeping feeling when you're putting in the work and progress feels slow. It's easy to let that emotion derail your momentum. But frustration is not failure, it's feedback. It means something isn't clicking. It's your system asking for improvement. The inconsistent person throws away the whole plan in frustration. The consistent one pauses, studies, and adapts. Emotional intelligence isn't about avoiding frustration. It's about extracting the lesson from it. That's how it becomes fuel, not friction. Even anger has its place. Used recklessly, it destroys relationships and clarity. But channeled properly, it becomes fire. Anger at your own laziness can drive you to rebuild discipline. Anger at your circumstances can push you to work twice as hard. Anger can remind you that you are not powerless. But the key is to stay in control. The moment emotion leads and logic disappears, you lose the edge. Emotions should be companions, not captains. Most people wait for the right feeling to act, but the consistent individual acts regardless of how they feel. They act even when sad, when bored, when disrespected. They do not require permission from their mood to move. They've trained themselves to take action and allow their emotions to catch up later. It's not about being cold or robotic. It's about building the kind of inner discipline that survives emotional storms. Your relationship with emotion defines your ceiling. If you only show up when you feel good, you'll live in cycles of inconsistency forever. But if you teach yourself to process emotion in motion, to feel deeply and still execute, you become someone who cannot be stopped. People will call you strong, but it's not strength, it's control, it's mastery. It's the decision to stop waiting for calm and to keep building in chaos. And here's what most don't realize: the more you train this, the easier it gets. The first time you work through sadness, it's brutal. The 10th time, it's normal. The 100th, it's instinct. You begin to expect emotional discomfort, and you meet it with action. Eventually, your nervous system adapts. Your confidence grows, not because everything is easy, but because you've built proof that emotions no longer own you. But even after mastering purpose and emotion, there's still a danger ahead. The belief that discipline is based on daily motivation, that staying consistent means constantly feeling driven. This is where most people break for good. That's why the next secret is even more practical. It's not about mindset, it's about habits, systems, routines, because when motivation fails, structure must carry you forward. Once you've clarified your purpose and learned to convert emotion into power, the next step is where most people either rise or relapse: structure. Emotion gives you drive, but structure gives you direction. Motivation may get you started, but it will never carry you far. It's fleeting, easily hijacked by stress, social media, setbacks, and self-doubt. Relying on motivation to be consistent is like relying on the weather to plant crops. Sometimes it works, most times it doesn't. The ones who endure don't wait to feel ready. They build systems that make action automatic, and the most powerful system of all is habit. The most successful people don't think about showing up. They've removed thinking from the equation entirely. They don't negotiate with themselves in the morning about whether or not to stick to their goals. They've programmed their day like code: wake up, move, work, reflect, repeat, no debate, no delay. It's not exciting, it's not dramatic, but it's inevitably effective. You can't build anything lasting on motivation alone, but a system of small, repeatable actions, done daily, will move mountains. Start small. That's where the real transformation happens. The brain resists change if it feels too overwhelming. So instead of committing to a radical overhaul, build micro commitments: 10 minutes of focused writing, 15 minutes of reading, 1 page of planning. Small tasks feel manageable, and because you repeat them, they compound. What starts as a tiny ritual becomes part of your identity. You don't just write. You are a writer. You don't just exercise. You are someone who doesn't skip. You're not faking consistency, you're living it one brick at a time. The people who struggle to stay consistent often have no structure. They are driven entirely by how they feel each day, and because emotions fluctuate, so does their behavior, but habits bypass emotional chaos. When something becomes habitual, it happens even when you're tired, even when you're uninspired, even when life gets chaotic. You don't ask if you're in the mood, you simply execute. This is the secret. Consistency without emotional permission. The structure you create must align with your deeper purpose. That means your habits shouldn't just be random productivity hacks. They should be built around the specific person you're trying to become. If your mission is mastery, build a learning routine. If your mission is wealth, build systems around money, strategy, and execution. If your mission is freedom, create habits that make you more disciplined, not more comfortable. Every habit is a vote for the future you. Make sure you're casting the right ballots. You'll face resistance, this is guaranteed. Even when your purpose is strong, even when you're emotionally aware, you'll have days where the routine feels pointless. This is where most people stop, thinking their habits aren't working. But the truth is, the results are always lagging indicators. You plant the seeds for weeks, sometimes months, before the roots even show. That's why consistency built on motivation fails. Motivation wants fast returns. Habits trust the process. Trust is what sustains effort when reward feels far away. The environment you build around yourself is just as critical as the habits you follow. People underestimate how much their surroundings influence their behavior. If your workspace is cluttered, your phone is full of distractions, and the people around you don't value growth, you are constantly fighting an uphill battle. Discipline is harder when the default setting of your environment encourages weakness. Make it easy to succeed. Place the tools you need within arm's reach. Set reminders, remove temptations, automate decisions. Don't rely on willpower, rely on architecture. Identity is the final transformation habits bring. When you repeat a behavior enough, your brain doesn't just remember the act, it starts to internalize the belief. This is who I am. And when your identity changes, your standards rise. You no longer skip the gym because you're not the kind of person who skips. You don't miss deadlines because you don't miss deadlines. This is why habits matter more than raw discipline. Discipline gets you through day 1. Habits make sure you show up on day 100, day 3, 165, day 1, 0, 0, 0. There will still be obstacles. Life will always throw distractions, tragedies, emergencies. But when you've built a life structured by habits, you won't be shaken by every storm. Your routine becomes a refuge. Even when chaos hits, you have a foundation to stand on. That stability is what allows you to keep going when others stop. Purpose gave you the fire. Emotional mastery gave you control. Habits give you permanence. And now, once your structure is in place, there remains one more challenge, adversity, not as a temporary hurdle, but as a permanent reality, because what happens next is not about strategy. It's about what you do when everything goes wrong, and staying consistent becomes the hardest choice of all. Once habits become part of your system, a false sense of control can sneak in. Things start to feel predictable. You wake up, follow the plan, stay on track, and then something breaks. Maybe it's personal, maybe it's financial, maybe it's internal, a silent burnout or a creeping feeling that nothing's working anymore. This is the moment people don't prepare for. The moment when adversity doesn't just knock, it crashes in without warning. When structure alone no longer feels strong enough. This is where consistency earns its real meaning. Not in perfect weeks, but in your response to chaos. The truth is, everyone eventually faces the wall. Loss, rejection, failure, betrayal, fatigue, none of it is avoidable. The mistake people make is believing that consistency means avoiding adversity. In reality, consistency is the posture you maintain when everything else collapses. It's what you fall back on when certainty vanishes. The person who shows up in the storm doesn't have more strength. They just refuse to let the storm dictate their identity. They keep the same rhythm even with a limp. They continue the process even when the results are invisible, because at some point the process becomes their anchor. This is where most people fold, not because they're weak, but because they expected progress to be fair. They believed if they followed the system and built good habits, life would cooperate, but life doesn't owe you symmetry. Sometimes you give everything and receive silence. Sometimes you prepare perfectly and still fail. The question is not whether it will happen. It's whether you will keep going anyway. Whether you will stay consistent even when progress slows, when applause disappears, and when doubt grows louder than belief. During adversity, excuses multiply. Your mind starts presenting alternatives. Take a break. Skip today. Start fresh next week. They sound reasonable, even compassionate, but they're seductive lies. Because in adversity, every skipped day is not just a loss of progress. It's a vote for a new identity. It tells your mind, when things get hard, I shrink. That identity builds fast, and once it's locked in, it becomes your new default. The only way to stop it is to resist that first step off the path. Even if all you do that day is a fraction of your usual work, that action is a declaration, I'm still here. Consistency during chaos is not about performance, it's about presence. You may not be able to operate at full capacity, but showing up in any way reclaims control. A 5-minute journal entry, a 10-minute walk, reading one page, these acts seem small, but they're symbolic. They tell adversity that it can shake your world, but it cannot erase your direction. And over time, this becomes your greatest weapon, not talent, not intelligence, but the emotional endurance to keep moving in darkness. Most people don't understand that adversity can be used. It can sharpen your vision. It can strip away illusions. It forces you to ask, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? And when the answers are real, not borrowed from others, you emerge with more than discipline. You emerge with identity. You no longer pursue your mission because it's exciting. You pursue it because you cannot imagine life without it. That is what consistency under pressure does. It turns effort into essence. This mindset only develops through pressure. You have to feel it. You have to get punched in the gut by failure, left breathless by disappointment, and still find your footing. This is how confidence is forged, not through success, but through survival, through choosing progress when progress doesn't seem to choose you back. That's what separates those who play at greatness from those who live it. There's a misconception that taking time off when things get hard is always healing. Sometimes it is, but more often, the deepest healing comes from momentum, from regaining your rhythm, from proving to yourself that your standards are not dictated by circumstances. That's what real power looks like, staying rooted while everything around you is unstable. It's the person who still trains after losing a job, still creates after being rejected, still plans the future while sitting in present uncertainty. If your habits were built correctly, they will hold you even when your motivation evaporates. And when you've shown up long enough through adversity, you start to become dangerous, not to others, but to your own limitations. You break the emotional ceiling that's governed your life, and once you've broken through once, it becomes easier the next time. Pain doesn't scare you anymore. It becomes familiar. You expect it, prepare for it, and most importantly, you never allow it to become your excuse. Consistency is not the absence of struggle. It's the refusal to surrender to it. And if you can stay consistent through adversity, you've proven to yourself that your purpose, your habits, and your character are stronger than any storm. That's where transformation becomes irreversible.